Why does my husband not care about my feelings? I'm sorry, Mr. Ross, but she's not in the office. May I take a message? Yes, you can take a message. Tell that lying cheater to answer her cell phone. No, Cynthia. Just tell her that her husband called and for her to call me back when she figures it out. Will do, Mr. Ross. This conversation I had just had with my wife's secretary was an exact duplicate of yesterday. In fact, my wife had been incognito for practically the entire last month. Her cell phone went straight to voicemail. When I called her at work, she was never at her desk. I left message after message, voicemail after voicemail, and waited by the phone that never rang. There was a time when Chris answered my calls on the second ring. She was always happy to hear from me. Her voice boomed with love and tenderness. What happened to those days? Lately, it seems like I have to make an appointment just to ask what time she'll be home. God, when we first got married, we were so in love. We were perfect together. We seemed destined to grow old as Mr. and Mrs. Ross. Before her, I couldn't imagine calling any woman by her last name. The ones I dated were either too bossy, too jealous, too clingy, or too ugly. The worst were the independents. You know who those are. The ones who claim they don't need a man to do anything for them, yet want you to treat them like goddesses. Chris was none of those things. She was so loving, gentle, attentive, and very sexy. Until recently, she had never been one of those wives who nagged their husbands, driving them to an early grave. We'd never had a fight. I mean, never. We didn't even have petty fights. If it came to a disagreement, she'd say, "It's okay, baby. Just do what you think is right." And I never heard anything more about it. When we first met, I was a young attorney on the rise. I had just graduated from Harvard Law School and was ready to grab the world by the balls and make it my own. I didn't have dreams, I had goals. I didn't just want to be a good lawyer, I wanted to be great. Chris worked as a waitress at my favorite restaurant. I took my clients there when I was trying to close a deal or have a casual meeting outside of the office. She was the perfect combination of a sweet smile, shy innocence, and flirty fire. She had a sophisticated beauty, not the cheating kind. I always made sure to sit in her section. There was something about her that drew me in. I don't know what it was, but I was hooked on her. Within 6 months, I was able to get a rough idea of who she was. She was still in college, her senior year, and was preparing to become a teacher. In addition to her waitressing job, she was moonlighting as an elementary school teacher and private tutor for a couple of spoiled, rich high school students. When I finally couldn't stand it, I asked her out. She blushed and laughed nervously before turning me down. That was the first time. Since I always get what I want, I began to push for what I wanted. I started showing up at the restaurant when I knew she was finishing her shift, with a fresh bouquet of roses. I left love notes under the windshield wipers of her battered Honda Civic. I did it all. The chivalrous act that finally won her over occurred when I showed up at one of her classes she was teaching as a substitute. I got down on one knee in front of all those kids and asked her to be my girlfriend. I even had a cheap plastic ring. Under pressure from all the 6th grade girls who thought I was Prince Charming, I knew they would eat up this corny show. She agreed to a date. From then on, I didn't stop until I was told yes. My Chris knew my goals and supported them 100%. This often meant a lot of time away from home and the occasional dinner with a client, but she handled everything with grace and elegance. I was moving up the career ladder in the legal world pretty quickly. The more success I achieved, the more I wanted to do. I was reminded of a quote from the movie The Matrix. The Oracle asked Neo, "What does a man with power want?" More power. No one has ever spoken truer words. I will say that a life of luxury was to my wife's liking. She went from being a subtly beautiful school teacher to a sultry sex bomb. She was still teaching, but it wasn't the kids anymore. After marrying me, she went to graduate school and got a job at a local university. I think she taught English or something. I don't know. But I do know that she had a loyal student body that sang her praises. Besides being my favorite teacher in history, she was a caring wife to me. She entertained my clients and charmed them with her clever humor. She made me look like a rock star by dutifully submitting to her. She was the perfect support. When we weren't entertaining clients or taking the world by storm, we spent a lot of time together. She watched basketball and soccer with me. I had never met a woman before her who did that. We both loved Italian food, so we went to Vinny's restaurant, the place where she worked, most often. She even liked action movies, which I liked. No heartwarming romance for this girl. Chris was the kind of woman who could sit and watch a basketball game with me and then go upstairs and turn into Jenna Jameson. She liked to do everything. She really was a very attractive woman. We both decided we didn't want to have kids yet. We were having too much fun to live. We were young, in love, and had the whole world at our fingertips. Without kids to keep us anchored, we had the freedom of the world. We could travel anywhere at will, buy anything we wanted, have sex anywhere in the house, or outside of it, anytime we wanted. There was one night that changed the nature of our relationship. It was at a dinner I was hosting with a client named Mr. Wellington. He brought his wife with him, and naturally I brought mine. I was trying to engage this guy, and I was trying very hard. He was an elderly man who was practically frittering away his money. He constantly needed legal help with bogus paternity suits and trumped-up sexual harassment claims. The money I was getting from him would allow me to make partner in my firm. Needless to say, it was too important to me to leave anything out. When he arrived at the restaurant, my wife and I were already seated. Let me tell you, she looked gorgeous that evening. I bought her a new cocktail dress and a diamond necklace especially for the occasion. I needed us to look like the epitome of success. My plan worked all too well. I noticed that Mr. Wellington immediately took a liking to my wife. In fact, he openly flirted with her. The fact that my wife and I were present at this dinner was irrelevant. He made sexual innuendos and inappropriate jokes with such ease that I was confused at first. I calmed down and remembered why I was here. Besides, his wife didn't seem to mind. She didn't even lift her eyes from her champagne glass to cast an incredulous glance at him. I decided that since his wife didn't seem too upset, I should relax too. More than likely it was harmless. Chris, however, didn't relax. She was visibly uncomfortable. She didn't laugh at his crude jokes and threw awkward glances in my direction. I tried to ignore her and focus on my client. As the evening went on, I noticed that Chris was becoming increasingly irritated. Whereas at first she tried to hide her discomfort, she was now openly stating it. Then she became downright rude. Eventually, I had to apologize and pull her to the side of the bathroom to calm her down. "Chris, what is wrong with you?" "What do you mean, what's wrong with me? Are you even sitting at the same table with me? Tell me you noticed your disgusting client hitting on me right in front of you?" "That's just the way he is. His wife doesn't give a shit about it." "That's because that fool is so stoned right now, she'd be cool if the restaurant caught fire." "Chris, please, I need you to bear with me a little longer. Just don't make a scene." "Okay, honey. I'll do my best. But if that fat asshole ever raises his hands on me again, I'm going to punch him in his fat face." With those words, she rushed towards the table. It wasn't until I sat down at the table that her words reached me. When had he had time to lay his hands on her? I took a closer look at Chris. I realized two things. First, my client's chair was positioned so that his hands were out of my sight, but he was close enough to reach my wife unobtrusively. Second, she would occasionally jump up and look at me pleadingly, as if begging me to save her. That's when I realized that the asshole had been silently molesting my wife all evening. I was very angry. But I needed that asshole's money. So I did what I told her to do. I smirked and nudged her. Finally, the horrible evening came to an end. Chris was sitting in my BMW, looking out the passenger side window as jazz played in the background of the radio. She was next to me, but I could tell she was still in the restaurant. I tried to bridge the gap between us by taking her hand and gently kissing it. She just pulled her hand away and continued to ignore me. When we got home, I'd had enough. Look, Chris, I'm sorry Mr. Wellington misunderstood you, but you don't want me to beat around the bush about it. She looked at me and grinned. Misunderstood me? You have no idea how he got me. You were too busy sucking up to his money to care about that. Look, Chris, just because a client messed with you a little doesn't give you the right to treat me like garbage. She looked at me with the most anguished expression a wife could have. Her face reflected pain, frustration, and anger. You knew that asshole was trying to seduce me all night, and you let him do it. This was news to me. I had assumed he was rubbing her thighs or something, but I didn't think he was that bold. Still, I had to maintain control of the situation, so I just accepted it. For heaven's sake, Chris, I'm trying to be a partner. To do that, we both have to make sacrifices. Now this time, the client went a little overboard on you. It's over. Just let it go and move on. Okay, Terry. Just let me know the next time you need to pump me up to get ahead in life. Lord knows I don't have any ambitions of my own. I thought I was a respected professor and a loving wife. But thanks for letting me know that none of that matters next to my most important role in your life, your changer. Needless to say, things were pretty cold in our house. But that's why God created lawyers to make so much money. A couple earrings and spa treatments later, I was back in her good graces. There were a few other instances of clients flirting with my wife, but none as egregious as Mr. Wellington. Chris had learned to behave more gracefully with the others than she had that night. Sometimes she even flirted back. I think she realized it was for the greater good. Besides, I think she secretly enjoyed the attention. Yeah, our life together was really great. Then, as happens to most wives who have it too easy, she calmed down. She started to take me for granted. What happens to women? They get the perfect husband who gives them everything they could ever dream of, and they start acting like we owe them. She started spending more time at work and less time at home. There was a chasm forming between us that was getting bigger by the day. She started finding reasons to argue with me. It got to the point where she was acting like a fool all the time. The next thing that was affected was our sex life. It deteriorated dramatically. I didn't realize it at first. Every day I thought everything was fine, until one night I looked at her as she lay next to me. She had just gotten out of the shower and smelled like mango or some other fruit that her shower gel smelled like. She had carefully styled her hair for the night. I had a sudden urge to have sex with my wife. Hey, honey, why don't you roll over here and make love to me? I growled hungrily at her. She stopped tousling her hair for a moment and looked at me in surprise. Then she turned away with an indifferent look and continued her occupation. I'm sorry, honey. I've had a long day. On top of that, I have a splitting headache. The words came out with such nonchalance as if she was describing a grocery list. With those words, she rolled over onto her back and turned off the lamp. I lay there confused while she pretended to be asleep. I thought back to our sex life. I realized that it had deteriorated so much that I had already forgotten what my wife looked like in the nude. I mean, we had sex occasionally, but lately it was more of a, she lets me do my thing kind of thing. She didn't even take her clothes off completely, and I can't remember the last time I saw her face. Now, at least for the last 6 weeks, it's completely gone. How could I have missed it? I was getting angrier by the second. I mean, I've gone out of my way to be the best husband and provider for her, and she has the nerve to turn me down when I want to play. Why, Chris, have you had a rough day? Do you have a headache? I'm the one who's been tearing myself up all day dealing with clients and snobby lawyers. The least you can do is give me some love after a long day. She rolled over and stared at my face for a couple moments. She shook her head, sat up straight, and turned on the light. At least she wasn't ignoring me anymore. If you haven't figured it out yet, Terry, I have a job too. Let's not even talk about your job. You're reading from a book to a bunch of students who would rather party anyway. Besides, I make more than enough for you to quit that job and be free to give your husband some relief. Do you realize that the last time we had sex was over a month ago? I thought that would make her realize how unreasonable she was being. Instead, it fueled her fire even more. So you think my only job is to sit around and babysit a bunch of kids for an hour and a half? You mean to tell me that's what I do to prepare lesson plans, grade papers, do counseling, go to meetings, and make up tests? I do all this to prepare myself to get up in front of hundreds of students multiple times a day to keep them occupied in between keg parties and wild sex? Do you think so little of me and what I do that you honestly think that? Suddenly, the bravado was knocked out of me. When she said that, it sounded so insensitive. Before I could retract my careless words, she snapped out of her seat again. "Go away, Terry! Away with you and your arrogant attitude!" With those words, she sprinted out of the room and slammed the door shut. "And if you need relief, why don't you go to the guest room?" And then there was silence. The next morning, she was gone before I woke up. I knew she had slept in the guest bedroom because the bed wasn't made. It looked like she had rushed off to avoid me. "Well, go away," I muttered, not addressing anyone, and headed to the bathroom to begin my morning ritual. I'll have to remember to send Stephanie, my secretary, to Tiffany to get me out of the doghouse. The rest of the day went smoothly. No matter what was going on at home, I stayed awake when I got to work. No matter how much my wife crapped on me, I was a lion as soon as I entered the lobby of the firm. When my secretary stopped by to let me know she was heading home to her fiancé, I remembered I needed her help with Chris. "Damn, Stephanie, I forgot to tell you to buy me a get-out-of-the-doghouse gift for Chris." She laughed and shook her head, her red curls spreading over her shoulders with every turn of her head. Did I forget to mention that Stephanie was an absolute beauty with a trim body and angelic face? "If you look in your closet on the top shelf, I bought you some gifts for your wife to get out of the doghouse. You need so many of them that I just decided to open you an account at Tiffany's." God, what would I do without this woman? "You're a lifesaver, Steph. I have to remember to give you a gift." "Oh, don't worry. You always get me something for my birthday and Christmas." She pointed to some rather expensive jewelry that adorned her neck, ears, and fingers. "Did I buy you this?" "Oh, yes. And I must say you have excellent taste. But I suspect your wonderful secretary bought them on your behalf," she said with a playful laugh. I couldn't help but smile. "I'm glad you like them. I don't know what I'd do without my life-saving secretary." "Well, if you want my opinion, you should consider giving her a raise." As she left, I couldn't help but marvel at her slender body. When I got home, Chris wasn't there. I looked at the clock and made sure it was 9 o'clock at night. Where could she have been so late? I absent-mindedly tossed her necklace, a gift from the doghouse, on the kitchen counter and grabbed a beer from the fridge. Good thing I had a long client dinner and didn't need my wife to cook for me. That would have been too repressive for the professor. It's nice to know that the role of loving wife comes a distant second to snotty teenagers. I was about to go up to my room to take off my suit when I heard the garage door open and her car pull in. I changed my mind and sat on a stool by the island, waiting for her to come in. 15 minutes passed. It was like she knew I was waiting for her and wanted to annoy me. Finally, she came out of the garage into the kitchen. Seeing me sitting there, she walked past me. No, "Sorry I'm late," or "You've been waiting a long time." She blew past me like she didn't even need to explain anything. "Where? Have you been?" I growled. She stopped in the doorway and turned to face me. I thought her face would reflect surprise, but it turned out she was rather annoyed with me. "I was at work." "Where have you been all day?" "Don't you dare try to go on the offensive with me. It's, 9 o'clock. Since when do you work so late?" An arrogant smirk crept across her face. It mixed irritation and mocking amusement. "Is this an interrogation? Am I under oath right now?" "No, but you are taking wedding vows. Where were you?" She shook her head and turned to leave, scoffing. Like you care. She headed for the stairs, but I went out the other entrance to the kitchen, grabbing my necklace on the way. I practically sprinted through our living room and interrupted her right before she reached them. What is that supposed to mean? You show up here at 9 o'clock without even saying, "How was your day?" and then you have the nerve to tell me off? After I went out and bought you this? I laid the necklace out in front of me like it was the Holy Grail. She looked at it nonchalantly and grabbed it with the same enthusiasm a person would grab a newspaper. Then she squeezed past me and went upstairs. "Tell Stephanie thanks," she shouted over her shoulder before disappearing. Neither the next day nor the day after did the situation dissolve. I tried to build a relationship with Chris, but she wouldn't pay any attention to me. She only spoke to me when necessary and didn't say more than was required. When she did acknowledge my presence, she was coldly polite. She used the same indifferent tone I use when dealing with a difficult client. Over the following weeks, I put myself out to the best of my ability. I bought gifts. Stephanie did that. I had roses delivered to her at work. Stephanie did that too. I even made reservations at Winnie's restaurant. Stephanie did that, of course, but I'm a busy person. In reality, she just set me up. I didn't know what to do. I was out of ideas. I'd done everything I could, and she'd fucked it up. So I decided to give her freedom. I was spending more time at work than ever before, and that's saying something. My secretary Stephanie was always a good shoulder to cry on and knew how to cheer me up. In fact, she knew pretty much everything about me. She knew how to pump me up and prepare me for court, knew what things I needed to get me through the days that were never ending, and even helped me find clients if Chris was too busy with her life. Sometimes I think I would have lost my mind if Stephanie hadn't been my secretary, because we were so close. She became a way for me to pour out my soul. I needed her shoulder to cry on. She was there for me, and Chris wasn't. The further Chris and I got, the closer Stephanie and I became. Pretty soon I began to prefer Stephanie's company to my wife's. Not that Chris kept me company anymore. All the time I spent with Chris, she would explain how I was disappointing her or silently ignore me. Stephanie would say things to me that made me feel better, while Chris only wanted to make me feel bad. Soon, we hadn't had sex for 3 whole months. That's when I realized she was cheating on me. It all made sense. All the evidence fit my theory. She didn't want to be around me, spent more time away from me, and constantly refused to have sex. What an idiot! I needed more evidence. I needed to know everything about her. She didn't know who she was having sex with. If you think you can cheat on a lawyer and not see the light of day, you're in for a whole different story. We all know the first step in the abusive husband handbook. I hired a private investigator. He told me he would follow her and see what he could find out. He promised that if she cheated on me, he would get the goods and provide me with hard evidence. Being a lawyer, I knew what I needed from him. I was comforted by the fact that he was the best in the business. He would give me everything I needed to burn this cheating woman. He called me a couple weeks later. I could tell from his voice that things weren't looking good. "Mr. Ross, we need to meet as soon as possible. There are some things you need to know. What are you doing today?" "Well, I have a couple meetings I have to attend, and I'm taking a client to dinner. The closest free time I have is tomorrow night. Meet me at Vinnie's at 8 o'clock. "Mr. Ross, I strongly suggest you meet with me today. If you want to save your marriage, you will meet me as soon as possible." Look, first of all, I have no intention of saving a marriage with a lying, cheating woman. If you have any proof, I can look at it tomorrow. Then I can burn that fool as well as I can now. Now have a nice day. With those words, I hung up the phone. When I got home around midnight, Chris was sitting at the kitchen table. It was as if she had been waiting for me. In front of her was a glass of wine and an envelope. "Welcome home, darling. I've just about given up waiting for you to come home." There was cynicism and contempt in her voice. To say I was shocked would be an understatement. "Chris, what are you doing?" She finally looked up at me, and I saw that her face was stained with tears. Her makeup looked like someone had smeared it all over her face. It looked like she had been sitting there crying for the past few hours. She took another sip of wine and handed me an envelope across the table. I took it and opened it. The contents of the envelope almost made me lose my lunch. I hired a private investigator to keep an eye on you. You know how you treated me, but I hired mine months ago. He's been following you. I barely heard her speak in the background. My attention was focused on the photos I had in my hands. I leafed through photo after photo that showed Stephanie and I at several restaurants in my car, going in and out of motel rooms. Some of the photos were innocuous, others showed us kissing and holding hands, but it was the explicit shots of me having sex with Stephanie that gave me the biggest shock. Chris, I can explain. Explain what, Terry? How you've been having sex with your secretary for months now. But Chris, it wasn't what it looked like, it was just sex. Just sex? Tell me, Terry, if it was just sex, why did you hire a private investigator on me? My face must have reflected the emptiness that had set in my brain, because she shook her head and laughed cynically. To think you actually thought I was cheating on you. I bet you were planning how to throw me the divorce papers of divorce when you yourself have been cheating all along. I tried to speak, but the words weren't coming. I couldn't get a word out because she was only getting hotter. To think that after all I've done for you, you could do this to me. I put up with your stupid customers because you asked me to. I eat at your favorite restaurant because that's where we first met, even though I hate Italian food. I even sit and watch basketball with you because it's the only time I can take a moment between you and your work. I even put off having kids because you wanted to have freedom. I do all this for you, and you have the nerve to cheat on me with that fool. But honey, I thought we both wanted that. No, Terry. You were the one who wanted all of this. I just sat around like a retard and hoped that one day you'd think enough of me to put me first once in a while. I tried to be the best wife to you and hoped you'd realize how much I meant to you. But I should have known that a narcissist like you would only see what he wanted to see. With those words, she stood up and headed out of the kitchen toward the front door. Only then did I notice the packed bags. I love you, Terry. I probably always will, but I refuse to be candy for you anymore. I'm not an accessory you have to wear to look good. I'm a person with feelings. I fell apart. I turned into a confused, pleading person. Chris, please don't go. Please. Look, I fucked up. I realize that now, but I can change. I can change. Just put the bags down and give me another chance. She put the bags down and wheezed. She turned, looked me in the eyes, and gently touched my face. For the briefest moment, I saw a ray of hope. Then her face turned sour, as if she had seen an image of me and Stephanie. She slowly removed her hand and shook her head. You don't love me, Terry. Yes, you would let one of your clients have sex with me if it would help you get ahead. She turned away from me and picked up her luggage. All that time you spent making partner. If you'd spent half that effort making partner with me, we wouldn't be here. Tomorrow my lawyer will send you to court. By the way, that's where I've been for the last month, meeting with a lawyer and a private investigator. That's why I'm coming home so late. I stood there like an idiot. All the time I spent controlling everything I touched. The one time I needed to, I was useless. I loved you, Terry. God knows I loved you with every fiber of my being. I would never break the vows I made to you. I could put up with a lot of your nasty things because I loved you. But once I found out you were cheating on me with Stephanie, I was done. I watched her disappear out the door. The tears flowed slowly, but as soon as they came, I burst into tears as if my life was over. I fell to my knees and sobbed so loudly that it echoed throughout my now empty house. Outside, I heard her car start and pull out of the driveway. And in the same instant, she was gone. The end. Subscribe to my channel! Thank you.